Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome back to another episode of A Few Short Minutes, the pod, where I just want to remind you it takes only a few short minutes a day to actually rewire your brain. Today, my friends, we have Jennifer with Parent with Care. And so let me read you a little bit about Jennifer, tell you a little bit about Jennifer. So she's the driving force behind Parent with Care. And Parent with Care empowers allies and parents of LGBTQ plus youth through personalized coaching, workshops, and engaging presentations. She taps into her rich experience as part of a parent of 3 adult children, one proudly identifying as bisexual, and a bonus parent to a transgender man. As a certified parent coach with a master's in library science and educational leadership, she might be smart, y'all. She seamlessly blends professional expertise with personal insight. Her diverse career includes impactful roles such as executive of Young Artists of America in Strathmore, a nonprofit offering world-class training to young performing artists, school librarian, director of library programs to DC Public Schools, and training manager to Equality Loudoun for an LGBTQ plus advocacy and nonprofit in Loudoun County, Virginia. Her steadfast commitment to fostering understanding and celebration among parents is unwavering. Guiding and supporting parents through their unique journey, Jennifer helps them shift from fear and confusion to becoming enthusiastic allies for their children. Through her foundation of compassion, awareness, respect, and empathy, C.A.R.E., she untangles the complexities of parenting and creating a supportive environment for her unique family. That was a mouthful, sister. You are very educated in your storied career. Introduce yourself past all the accolades. Who are you without all that stuff?
It's such a PR-ish, like normally that's in print, right? It's terrible.
Right. It feels icky to hear it.
I'm so sorry.
It feels icky to hear it. Oh, no. I don't mind. But I know from when I do that and I guest on other podcasts and people are like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I don't like hearing that about myself. It just feels very uncomfortable. I get that.
Yeah. So I'm a mom of 3 amazing adult humans and an amazing adult trans guy. I will say, like, the reason I do this work is people need to get over their fear and misunderstanding of queer people. People need to understand that the world is not safe for too many queer people because they're under attack for whatever reason, right? It's not okay. And so I think it's really important. I am so aware of my identity as a white, cisgender, heterosexual woman.
Absolutely. I just had this conversation with my best friend about I'm super aware of my white privilege, absolutely aware of it. Yeah.
100%. And so I've seen, the working with kids forever and my own children, seeing the impact that parents have. I just want to make the world safe, right? And so my job as an ally is to be out there in front, taking the arrows and helping educate on behalf of others, and just truly help people understand who their kids are so that we can change the tide.
I love that so much. And usually what happens is there's some sort of personal epiphany, personal experience, a pivot in your life that leads you into this direction. And would you share like that, hey, this is what I want to do moment, or this is what I need to do moment?
Sure. So a million years ago at the beginning of the internet, 1997, 96, I actually hosted a radio show called Discovering Kids. And I was connecting folks with local resources. And then I created an internet directory for families in Montgomery County, Maryland. Ran that for many years and then realized there's this thing that entrepreneurs don't always have called health insurance. That's a really good thing to have when you have children. So went to school, got the library science degree, worked as a school librarian. And so I've always been connected with parenting as a thing that was really important. We don't actually teach people how to do this thing. So seeing the positive and the negative and the recognition of myself as, a flawed human being and a parent, I got to the point where I was working at an all-girls boarding school. And we had 8 students who did not identify as female. And this school was struggling with, how do we allow these children to be here? What is female? All of this was happening. At the same time, I was supporting a couple of kids and coming out to their parents. Some of it was going super well, some it was not. And my own personal experience, my bonus son, his father, had not understood what it was when his son transitioned. And they had a falling out that led to a couple of years of no communication, which was really hurtful for everyone. And so working with him to help him understand who his kid is, and what all it meant to be transgender, coincided with me being like, I can't be in a space anymore where I can't support the people that I know need to be affirmed and supported. So I left that school. I had been working for Equality Loudoun and doing some advocacy work with them. So it all just kind of came together, and I'm like, parent coaching is a thing. And I became certified as a parent coach, went through a program to do that, and just decided that my niche really needed to be parents, mostly, frankly, most of whom are like, I'm an ally, all is good. Oh, wait, shit, my kid? Now what?
Yeah, it's okay as long as it's not my kid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, it really, it's every single person that I have worked with. Again, I truly have gotten folks to go from that place of fear and like, I don't understand this, to understanding that we all have our internalized biases, and that is just how it is. And we're going to move through that and get to know who this individual human being is and honor and affirm them so that they can live and live joyfully.
I absolutely love that so much. Something came to mind when you were talking about, it's okay as long as it's not my kid. Back in the beginnings of the internet, before the beginnings of the internet, in the mid 90s, I'm the oldest of 3, and we ended up in family therapy because of my youngest brother and his struggles. And I remember having this conversation with my parents about my dating life, because I was 16, I think, at the time, somewhere around there. And something came out like, okay, what are the rules? What are the rules? We're having family therapy. What are the rules for me for dating? And it was, you can have Black friends, but you can't have a Black boyfriend. And that's okay for other people. We love Black people, but not for you. And I was like, what the actual hell? And I couldn't believe that it was coming out of my parents' mouth. But they were raised in the 60s in middle Oklahoma. So I'm not shocked now. I get it. And I don't think they intended to be absolutely prejudiced, but there it was, right? And so I've experienced that on a smaller level, and I can't imagine if my whole identity and who I knew myself to be was centered around well, it's fine for everybody else, but not our family, not you. And because what I know from my friends who identify as non-binary or, not gender specific or any of those, the fluidity, all of that stuff, is that they are absolutely having a war inside themselves already.
Yeah.
For us to add to it is not a stressor that they need, because they're already battling their inherent biases. Yep. Can you talk about that war a little bit and maybe what you saw in your bonus son?
Yeah. So I want to explain that children are clear about their own gender identity by around age 3. Okay. So giving an example of, I'll use this example all the time. So my bonus son grew up, identified female, was lesbian. I met him when he was 26. He had just started his transition. He is now married and has a kid. And when his wife was pregnant and they got that, really important sonogram around 20 weeks, he's like, oh, it's a boy. And literally in my head, my first thought was, is it? Right? Like, you're a trans man, that just a penis does not mean male, right? Like, but it is so ingrained even in a transgender man, penis equals male, right? So that, I think what people need to understand is when people say, oh, kids don't know, they're too young, right? Is they know, but they also are being exposed to all of the societal messaging, right? All the time. And so it really is important to understand, like, listen to your child, believe who they tell you that they are in this moment, and know that it can change. We can talk about all of that part stuff too. But being aware of what comes out of your mouth, right? Like, again, my son, my biological son, I knew he wasn't straight. There was no doubt in my mind. This kid was not heterosexual, and I grew up in the 80s, pick a team, right? Gay, straight.
That was it.
Sexual, that was it.
None of this middle stuff, none of these outlier stuff.
No.
That was it. It was the two categories. And even being gay then was like, you had the AIDS crisis and all of that stuff. So that was even.
It was. But I grew up right outside of DC, and I used to go into the gay bars, and I was like, I had a ton, like, no problem, right? So my kid is gay. Cool. So when he was 19, he was away at college and was called the F slur on campus. And he wrote a op-ed in response to that. And in this article, he comes out as bisexual. I'm like, what? What is this? Didn't understand at all.
I'm confused.
Yeah. Like, how can you not? So, obviously I've learned a whole lot, right? And I've been doing this work for quite a long time. And it literally was just a couple of months ago that he came to me and he shared that when he was growing up, that pick a team mentality caused him to be unwilling to identify as bisexual. And so I am an example of the conditioning that I not only absorbed, but then projected onto my kid had an impact. And it's like, oh man, I am so sorry. That sucks. And so we've done the repair work and we're, going through all that. But I think it is just so important to recognize, like, here's another example. We have the kids that are in schools. I was talking with a school counselor, and she said, all these kids are coming to me and they're insisting that they're non-binary. They really think they're trans, but they're saying they're non-binary. And the reality is they don't want to be labeled as trans because it is not safe. And so, again, the response to whatever messaging is happening is what's going to cause any kind of problems. If we would just allow kids to truly speak their truth and believe them and support them, it's going to go a long way.
I got so many chills when you were talking. What came to mind for me is when you said, the messaging that even you, as somebody really aware of others and in the advocacy space, still presented messages to your son of bisexual is not okay. And I think that, parents, we do that to our children not knowing. So I'm a huge I talk a lot about breaking generational trauma and how I've, tried to break the cycles, and some cycles I did break, some cycles I continued. And it wasn't until the kids were older and I see these seeds that I sowed accidentally and I go, oh, fuck.
Damn, I thought I fixed that one. Shit.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
And we do that just on a regular basis, let alone with bigger things to handle like this. And it floors me. Again, I'm super aware of my privilege. I really, really am. And especially being cisgendered hetero, like that too, right? And so I remember having the conversation with my kids of like, hey, who do you like in school? Trying not to put anything on it and just let them tell me. And it was so difficult because I think I was being too vague and they couldn't pick up what I was putting down. So I was like, yo, do you like boys? Like, do you like girls? Or do you like both? And they were like, oh, no, mom, we're straight. And I'm like, okay, just checking. But, it, even as parents, like as aware as we try to be, for those of us that are, there's still, we still leave marks,
Yeah.
whether we intend to or not. Talk about that conversation with your son when you were like, oh shit, my bad. How did you handle that? How did you apologize to him without invalidating him?
Yeah. I mean, I will share, we've been going through some of that family systems stuff too, right? There's been a whole lot of going back and looking at patterns and stuff. So I've been on a bit of an apology tour with my children. Therapy is really good for everyone.
Therapy is really good for everyone.
And so it wasn't an unusual conversation for us to sort of revisit something that like, hey, this hurt. And me having to be like, wow, okay, right? Impact over intent, always. And so it doesn't matter whether I believed I was doing the right thing or thought that I was, fixing something and doing all of this. And this is, so I'll explain the care part, the compassion, awareness, and respect piece. As parents, we want to fix, we want to save, right? We don't want our kids to hurt. And so we always, like, compassion triggers action. We want to do. Okay. Awareness is getting to know and understand who the person is that's in front of you, not your beliefs of who they are or who they could be or should be, but who they actually are. Right. Respect is believing that information about that person. And that you can get to a place of empathy. Right. And empathy, I thought that I was being empathetic all this time. I wasn't, because empathy is not doing. Empathy is just being with, right? And so empathy is what allows connection to happen, right? And that circle, we're going to go through that with all kinds of things. And so I had to acknowledge that I was not acting in a place of empathy, as in too many times when they were growing up. And now I can be, right? And I can just listen, and realizing that their experience is their reality, period. And it's authentic and it's valid.
And I want you to talk about, because something you said earlier, about, believe them who they are right now, who they say they are now, because that can change. How do you handle that when you have this empathy and you hold space for them and they tell you one thing, and you're like, okay, this is the truth, whatever, good. And then 5 years later, they're like, like with your son being gay versus bisexual. And you're like, wait a minute. Wait, is this the truth now? So was it the truth then? Or like, I'm so confused. And I think that that's part of the confusion as a collective with trans people, with non-binary people, with, gender fluid people, is that we have our societal norms. We want everybody to fit in the box. Our brains love to categorize people. That's how we feel safe. Right.
That's
and
how
so if
we're
somebody says
biologically determined.
Absolutely. So if somebody says, this is the truth today, and then tomorrow it's a different truth, how do you handle that? How do you coach your parents to handle that?
So I remember in high school, I went through a really preppy stage, and then I was really punk. At one point I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I became a librarian. And that, right. So like, I have learned a whole lot about myself throughout life. And like you said, our brains are designed to categorize. It makes us feel safe because it is, right? We know the difference instantaneously between a tiger and a kitten, right? Thank you, brain. But we have to allow for people to discover things about themselves. And I think this is where parents forget that their children are autonomous, independent human beings, right? And so we can have all the dreams we want. We can make all of the assumptions about who they're going to be. But if we want to maintain connection and we want them to be safe, and in some cases, quite literally alive, it is a matter of accepting that it's not that you changed your mind. It's you discovered something else about yourself. And it's, I often will use the analogy when people are like, how do you know? Right. And I'm going to ask you the question, Stacey, are you left-handed or right-handed?
Oh, I'm right-handed.
How do you know?
Because that's the one I use. Like that's the one I was brought up with. It's my dominant.
Yeah. So if I handed you a pencil and asked you to write with your left hand, wouldn't feel right.
It would look like chicken scratch.
Yeah, it would be really uncomfortable. And so a lot of this knowing, whether it's gender or sexual orientation, is that same thing, right? I can't point to you exactly why. I just know I am. And so, but as I discover and learn more about myself, I might realize, oh, wait, no, that wasn't right. And I think, so when we talk about left-handedness, right, used to be that if you were left-handed, you were, cursed by the devil, and people literally were, beaten to the point where you're not going to use your left hand to write. When we stopped beating kids and allowed them to be left-handed, there was like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden there are all of these left-handed people in the world. They were always there. We didn't let them be left-handed. And it's the same thing with gender and sexual orientation. These people have always existed. And it's just now we have the visibility, we have the language, we have the awareness. And people who are like the percentage of folks that are transitioning in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s is enormous because they didn't know, right? And like my trans son transitioned at 26 because he didn't know that was really an option. And he, looking back, he's like, oh, wow, yeah, I see it. It was clear, but it wasn't an option, right? And so those options, those opportunities, the language that we have, it's just more prevalent. And so it feels to people that it's everywhere all the time. And it's just that we just have more awareness, right? And I will say, when you have politicians making this an issue, and all of the rhetoric and all of the screaming from the very vocal minority, it does make it feel like it's everywhere and it's exploding. And consistently, we've had the same percentage of population forever.
I think that what I correlated to in again, categorization of my own brain is like the rates of autism, right? Like autism has always been there. We know this, but people, it seems like it's everywhere because our diagnosis criterion have changed, because people are becoming more vocal about, oh yeah, this is how I experience life. And some don't even know. We've got a lot of late life diagnosed autism. I was just diagnosed ADHD in the last year. I'm 47. So
57, same.
Yeah. How I thought, both of my boys were diagnosed at like 5 and 7. So how I thought I wasn't, I blame their dad. Not blamed, but you know what I'm saying. Because he's ADHD. And I was like, but then perimenopause hit and I was like, man, my brain just is not, and so what I figured out is that it really exacerbated my ADHD symptoms. And now looking back, like your son, I go, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That connects.
And that also, like the ADHD diagnosis for women, right? Like it's very different for women than it is for men, males and females. And so, if we actually studied women and women's health, maybe we would have more information, but that's a
how dare we?
Topic.
That's a whole other podcast, sister. You are more than welcome to come back and talk about that one, because yes, I absolutely have some things to say. Jennifer, let's start a little foundational here. We kind of like took off running, which I love.
Yeah, we did.
But I want to kind of inform the audience that maybe do not have these people that are out because I know they have the people in their life, they just may not know it, right? That are out to people in the public. Talk about gender as a construct, because that's one of the first things we hear from non-binary, fluid, trans people is gender is a construct, but usually there's no explanation after that. Would you please explain to the audience so they can kind of start to understand what we mean when that's being said?
Sure. So I look at different aspects of individuals, right? So we have our sexual identity, which is usually male or female. We're intersex, right? And that's usually what the doctor says. You're born, you have a penis or a vagina, we're going to give you this label. We know there's a lot more to biological sex than that, but that makes it simple. Gender identity, as I described, is that intrinsic feeling of who you are. And that is really on a scale, if you think of it from absolute femaleness, feminineness, to a total lack of, right? And the same for male and maleness and masculinity to the absence of. You can be anywhere along that scale, right? And so there are folks who are super feminine, but biologically male. They may or may not be transgender, right? You can, this is the other piece, is attraction is a completely different thing than gender. And then the other piece is that expression, right? That the external way that I present myself to the world, right? I have a little bit of makeup on, but I don't tend to go all out. I'm female, clearly. I know I'm cisgender. I know I'm heterosexual, but I'm not super feminine, right? So
that's funny, because I watched your hand do this when you said that. You were like, I'm female.
I'm female, but I meant the feminine piece, right? I'm feminine-ish.
You're not a girly girl.
Yeah, not at all, right? So, I think people expect all of the things to align, right?
Again, categorization.
Yeah, and understanding that gender expression and gender identity are two different things, and they're going to be showing up in different ways. Sexual orientation, a whole nother thing. It's going to show up in different ways. And attraction. And so when we talk about sexual orientation, we have romantic attraction, that person that I want to connect with emotionally. And we have sexual attraction, that person I want to get with, right? Those two things may or may not align, right? So you might have people who are, and some people it's helpful to think of it as puzzle pieces, right? So you have your gender identity piece and your gender attraction piece, and just accepting people as individuals, right? That we are all going to be in different places on all aspects of this. But the gender construct is boys play with trucks, girls play with dolls, right? We tell children this. Our society tells children these are the pink toys are for the girls, the blue toys are for the boys. We made that up. Somebody somewhere decided that thing, right?
And then the government decided to pink tax us on top of it. So that's fun.
so there's that, right?
There's that too.
Have the patriarchy and all. Yeah.
That whole thing.
Another whole nother podcast.
But
it's that construct this is how we expect people to behave. And so where it's interesting when you talk about labels, for many people, for identity is that grounding piece that makes them feel comfortable in the world. Other people don't want any label, right? Don't tell me I don't fit in a box. And there's a lot of Gen Z that's like, we have no boxes. We're just going to make it up, right? And this is why when we talk about non-binary, I often coach people to use gender neutral language as much as possible, right? And then we talk
explain that for a second, because you've got your pronouns. I don't always have my pronouns, but that's another hot button issue that we hear about of like, why do I have to ask people what I want to call them?
Yeah.
Well, you also don't call them by the wrong name there, John. Like, if you're a Cindy and I call you a Karen, you're going to be insulted, and rightfully so. Yeah. So you ask people what their name is. You can ask what their pronouns are so you can address them in a way of respect. So talk about that kind of the asking people, and why do we want to do that? Why is that now what we want as a societal norm? It's not there yet, but it would be lovely if it was. Talk about that a little bit.
I talk a lot about the rainbow rule, right? We have the golden rule, the platinum rule. The rainbow rule is just don't make assumptions. Okay. And so as an ally, my job is to help educate folks again and to take the arrows, right? So if I am the one offering you my pronouns, then it becomes a bit more normed, right? It is normal in our society for people to be cisgender and heterosexual, right? So anything other than that is not the norm. So I think it is a way of just, again, respect, right? And so I will introduce myself. Hi, I'm Jennifer. My pronouns are she, hers, but how can I refer to you? That's it, right? People get all twisted up around what if I misgender somebody? Oh my God, how do we do this, right? Transgender people, for the most part, understand that accidents happen. If I have known you for 50 years as one gender and then you shift to another gender, I'm gonna get it wrong because I'm a human being and my brain is stuck, right? It's hardwired to things. All you have to do if that happens is apologize. I'm sorry. I meant to say, boom, and move on. That's it, right? It's just very simple. But I think it is the one that is people get freaked out about all the time is they, them, right? Like, how is that a singular? Ask Shakespeare. It always has been, right? And I'll give the example, right? I see somebody across the street. I wonder who they are. That's
beautiful,
right? And we use it all the time. And so I was actually working with a group yesterday that often has to write reports about individuals. And they're like, we don't want to use their name all the time. We want to be able to use pronouns. And I said, okay, so just write it however it comes out of your brain. And if you knew this person is male and you're using he, him, use this crazy little thing called control Control F. Everywhere that there's he, change it to
replace.
Right? Everywhere that is him, or change it to them. And then it makes sense. And it's a new thing to do. It's not, it is a change and it is a shift, but it is respectful. Just like you said, I'm not going to call you Stace without asking you, do you mind if I call you Stace? Right? Like don't ever call me Jenny. I'm not a Jenny. You can call me Jennifer or Jen, but I'm not a Jenny. So it is a respectful thing. And I think, again, it flares for people this fear of anything other than the norm.
Yeah. So let's talk about the amygdala for a second, because that is where this is all stemming from. So you guys, for you that don't know, there is a part of your brain in the back that is ancient. It is ancient. It is reptilian. That is how old, millions and millions and millions of years old. And it is literally to keep you alive. So it categorizes everything: good, bad, safe, not safe. And so when something new comes out, and let's take it back. Let's not even be in the LGBTQ space for a second. Let's say you want to start a new habit. It's the New Year's resolution, whatever. And you want to be a runner. And you've never been a runner in your life, but now you want to be a runner. Guess what this ancient part of your brain is going to say? No. Nope, that's not normal for us. We're not running. And so what do you do instead? You make excuses. You find other things to do. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, I only have an hour and a half. Oh, look, a vent that needs to be cleaned. Oh, I need to make a doctor's appointment. Oh, now I'm out of time. I mean, your brain will find any and every excuse not to do something new because it has deemed it not safe, even though your human brain knows that running is safe.
Yeah.
I mean, it might hurt and it might suck, but you're not going to die.
And you're not running from a bear, so it's okay.
And you're not running from a bear, right? But this back here says you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll find any excuse to make running not safe. So this is what I'm connecting when you're talking about, trans, LGBTQ, gender, all of that stuff, is that we have categorized it for so long in one way that now as this comes up and people are being who they are, we're going, we don't know that. That's weird. That's not safe. That's strange. It's a bear. It's not a bear.
Yeah.
It's not a bear.
I mean, think about the number of times that you have, a woman gets married and changes her surname and people like go with it, right? Because that's normal. But if I change my pronouns, like what, right? How does that, I do have a theory that it all goes back to the patriarchy, but again, I'm going to hold that another place. But it really is, it's just about fear. And so and another piece, and this comes up often also, is the religion piece. Okay. And all I'm going to say about that is that I have a middle daughter who is a Lutheran pastor, and her husband is a Presbyterian pastor. And I have it on their authority that God loves everyone, period. Right. And so when we go through and we think about the contradictions that people are willing to accept, right? I care so much about children's mental health. We need to make sure that all of the kids get the mental health care they need. Meanwhile, I can give you all of the statistics around the impact of mental health on LGBTQ plus youth, and it is literally killing them.
And the unaliving rates of that particular subset.
And so, right. So how do people who claim to be supporting children's mental health and wellness also support anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ policies and legislation, right? Like the action that you're taking is going to cause mental health crisis. So I think people need to step back and question themselves, right? Internal bias is 100% normal. We all have it, but we have to explore it. Where did this come from? How did I learn to believe this to be true? Right? Like, is this a feeling or is this a fact? All of this stuff that we have to look at. And, when parents are struggling with accepting and affirming their kids, we work a lot to figure out like what it is about your child that you love. Period. Right? Like looking at all of them. What is it that you love? Because all of that is still there. They're still the person that you love. And this is what helped my partner come to a place where he was fully accepting of his son, was recognizing he's still the same person, right? Like we still can talk football and we can go and do all these things we've always done. It doesn't matter. And it just doesn't matter. And it really seeing the individual, that's what's important.
So what comes up for me with hearing that about your partner is maybe there's a possibility of some sort of guilt or shame on the parent's part about having a child that, falls out of the norm scope in whatever way that is. You guys, this could be broader than just, sex, gender, LGBTQ. This could be a child that has severe autism. This could be a child that has severe ADHD. This could be, my oldest, for those of you that don't know, my oldest was born without an immune system. And the guilt that I had to go through, I went back and reviewed mentally every single day that I could remember of the 40 weeks that I was pregnant with him and tried to pinpoint the exact day that I fucked up my kid. Truth is, I didn't do it. He didn't do it, but man, it felt like it. And I had a lot of guilt around that as we were hospitalized a million times, and he's had multiple surgeries, and he gets infusions they're 6 hours long once a month. There's guilt there that I had to work through. Is that the same for your parents as well?
It is, right? What did I do wrong? Right. First of all, assuming that anyone can cause anyone to be queer, right? Like, they didn't read a book and turn this way. Again, whole other topic.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing too.
So yes, being able
not a choice.
It's not a choice. It's who they are, right? Yeah. Nothing caused it. That again, it's that I have to readjust my view of who this person is and what's possible. Then there's a lot of fear of what might happen. And this is where, again, I like to talk and reference my son. He's a man married to a woman. They have a child. He's got an amazing job. They own a house. Like life is good in his world. Um, so there's that fear of what might happen or what might not happen. Um, and how do I tell people, right? That's the shame piece. Like, how do I shift from a place of, I don't understand this, to becoming an enthusiastic, affirming ally? And that's hard. And not everybody wants to or is able to do that. But it's still within your home and within your family. If you want to protect your kid, which we all do, you have to accept and affirm who they are.
Mm. And again, you guys, this could be broader than just this subject. So take a look at your kid, whether they're still in a childhood state or an adulthood state, and just think, like, would I want my child to be treated this way because of their asthma, because of their eczema, because of their, wearing glasses? It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
And I think it's also recognizing that our job as parents is to encourage our children to be themselves, right? To be autonomous, individual, independent people. And I also, I talk about my kids a lot because they're amazing. But my oldest was in the Peace Corps and then worked for FEMA for 6 years and is now working emergency management with the state of California. She's fluent in Spanish and in English. I don't speak another language. I don't really travel. I have no need to go and live elsewhere. My middle daughter, as I said, is a pastor. I'm not religious. I don't go to church. My son is a classically trained countertenor. I hate opera. Okay. So each of my children found their way to doing and being themselves. I wouldn't take that path for any of them, right? Like, they've all chosen things that are 100% theirs. And that's the point, right? And I'm not saying by no stretch of anyone's imagination was I a perfect parent. I ask any one of my children. I reference
They'll
already.
tell you.
We're doing a whole lot of work. But that's where, again, like, if keeping the end goal in mind, what do you want your child to be? What existence do you want them to have?
Yeah. And I think most parents say, oh, I just want my child to be happy. Okay. Do you? Do you? Or are you imposing on them because of what your version of happiness looks like? And if you are, that's okay. It's okay. But just know that they're going to live your version of happiness and not their own. And do you want that for them? Did you want that for yourself? Look back at your childhood where your parents imposed what should be. And I definitely had this. And so I lived that life that my parents wanted for me. I had the 2 kids. I had the house. I had, the nice cars. I had a great job. I had a husband, had a pool, had all the cool things. And I was fucking miserable because it wasn't my life.
Yeah.
I was living somebody else's. I was living what my parents' version of what they wanted for me. And I was trying to please them. And so this is where I ended up. And I remember coming home for years at a time at night after working and going, this can't be it. This can't be my life. This can't be my life.
Yeah.
And, it just is so, like, again, not even on the LGBTQ, area, but look back and, like, what was imposed on you? Did it work? If it did, great. But I'm guessing it probably didn't. And now then what changed?
Yeah.
Because you have this realization of, like, oh, I didn't want that at all.
Yeah. No, if there was only one path, there wouldn't be the self-help industry. Right.
Oh, God, for sure. We would be out of a job. We would not have jobs.
No. And it's, nobody, there is no perfect system. There is no perfect path. It is getting to know. And I think this is the hardest thing for parents is that willingness to look inside and be like, oh, yeah, I did that. Okay. I need to repair that. I need to apologize. I need to accept responsibility for, right? And it's, again, thinking about what relationship do you want to have with your kid as they go through life? the number of kids, like if you look at the percentage of homeless youth, the vast majority are because they've been kicked out of their house for who they are. And so if you want to have a relationship with your children and your grandchildren, you need to keep it going, right? The number of kids that go no contact because they're not accepted. It may not happen when they're 13 or when they're 16, when they still have to live in your house, but as soon as they're able. And this generation of kids, 18 to 20s, early 30s, the percentage that are not even the LGBTQ plus kids, but just rampant cutting off family because they're standing up for themselves, what they want and need.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The vast, it's astounding how many people are no contact with their family. Great for them. Bravo. Like, that's awesome. Good for you. I went no contact for 2 years with my parents, and it was bittersweet. It needed to happen.
Yeah.
It needed to happen, but man, did I feel really lonely hurling on this rock through space without that family connection. But again, that's imposed, right? Of like, oh, but they're family. Oh, you only have one mother. Not true for some of us. Some of us have two mothers. Oh, you only have one mother, so you only have one dad. And
yeah.
I'm not obligated to burn to keep them warm.
Yep. Oh, I love that.
Because, yeah, I'm not obligated to burn to keep them warm. I don't have to live under their auspices, whether I'm under their roof or not. And I think that a lot of us are breaking free of the, oh, but they're your family trope and saying, okay, but they're my family and they're toxic. They're not healthy for me.
Yeah.
And that's a hard realization because we're brought up to honor and respect and obey and put them on a pedestal. And I think a pivot for me was seeing them as flawed humans. Seeing them as flawed human. I'm a flawed human. And it took me recognizing my flawed humanness to go, okay, well, if I'm a flawed human, okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And some people get to that place of forgiveness, right? And can move and accept, and others, it's too toxic and they can't. And this is where, again, when it comes, bringing it back to the queer identities, this is something very tangible that you can make a choice about as a parent. Right? It is a clear choice. You can accept and affirm, or you can choose not to, and just understand that there are consequences. Right? Just like we teach our kids, there are natural and logical consequences for things. It goes the other way too.
No contact would be a natural consequence. You said something and it triggered me and triggered a thought in my head. Oh, well, it'll come back to me if it was important. Talk about people working with you. How do they know? Oh, there it is. Okay. So if you can't affirm and accept, sorry, ADHD. And it's crazy. Sorry, we just run with it. If you can't affirm and accept, can you at least get curious?
Yes.
Can you at least get curious and ask your child questions and say, can we have a really raw, no holds barred conversation? And can we agree not to take offense from the other side? Can we just agree to that? I have some questions. And if you can get if you can't accept and affirm immediately, okay, at least get curious. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. So here's the script that I give folks to have verbally with their child. If your child comes and tells you that they are queer, number one, thank you for sharing that. That took a lot of trust and guts to tell me. Thank you.
Yep.
2, I love you. Not no matter what. I love you. 3, what do you need from me right now so that you feel supported? You can have that intrinsic internal freak out. You can be primal screaming in your head. None of that should be put on your kid. That is your stuff to deal with, right? Your child needs you in that moment. And those three things are going to open up the conversation, right? There's a whole lot that you can learn from coaches, from resources that I can, out the wazoo, to help you answer a lot of questions that you probably don't need to be asking your kid about, right? What you need to be asking your kid about is, what do you need from me? How can I help you? Sometimes it's, what do you, who needs to know, who doesn't need to know, right? Who do I need to help support you with? I talk a lot with teachers. This is kind of going off the parenting thing. But when people know that a child identifies as LGBTQ plus, and that child believes that they're not going to be safe at home, the safety of the child is the most important thing, right? So you can do something that I call proactive code switching, saying to that kid, listen, I know you don't feel safe with mom, dad, auntie knowing this information. So know that I see you and I affirm you and I will 100% support you. But also know that when I talk to them about you or, with you, I'm going to refer to you as the name and the pronoun that they will accept, because I want to keep you safe, right? The trust that builds with that kid, again, the ideal scenario, everybody's accepting and loving. That's not always the case. And so you might, as a parent, with your kids' friends, you may be in a position where it's not your kid coming to you and sharing, but it's their best friend, because they feel that you're an open, safe place for them. Those three things still apply. Thank you for sharing. I love you. What do you need?
Go back to the I love you no matter what part, because when you said no matter what, I was like, why? And then it clicked and I was like, oh, because that is inferring that what they just told you was bad or negative. And you're like they just robbed the store.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, I love you no matter what, Yep. And so it took me a second to click. So explain that no matter what a little bit more, please. Because I don't think
you hit it right on the head. It is adding any condition is anything after the but is a negative, right? And it's
right.
This again goes universally. If somebody is saying there's this thing that's positive, but here's the pile of shit, right? And so you, by saying no matter what, you are putting this identity, this information in a negative pile of shit. Don't do that.
And yet I think most parents say that because they're like, oh no, I want them to know it's unconditional. But right there, it was a condition. You just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of parents out there who would label themselves as an ally, but still do things like that. So what's another kind of subversive thing that you see in your coaching career or, in your life that parents maybe think they're doing out of unconditional love, but it's not?
Saying that it's a phase. I understand that you're going through this phase, right? It might be. Again, they might be questioning and trying to do things on and see, is this feel right to me? So assuming it's a phase, assuming it'll pass, a lot of the assumings, right? And instead of dealing with what actually is. Then they have parents who, and this, I don't know how to refer to my child when I talk to him. Here's this amazing tool that you have, your child. You can ask that question, right? Like, what
crazy thought?
Yeah, let them lead you through this journey, right? Also assuming that there is one coming out, right? For queer folks, there is never an end to coming out. Every new situation, every new camp, every new school, every new everything, they may or may not have to be able to come out again. And so,
I want you to talk about that a little bit more, because that was just a connection that I made. I had never, again, y'all, I know, hetero, cis, white, gendered woman, I get it. So I never made that connection of like, oh shit, every new job, every new friend, every new pickleball partner, every, book club, like, yes, talk about that a little bit, because
Yeah.
I
I mean,
didn't make that
it's a
connection.
forever thing, right? And we as again, cisgender heterosexual people don't ever think about it, right?
I never go to a new job and say I'm straight. Like,
No,
that never happens.
we don't hesitate about putting a picture of our significant other on our desk, right? Are we going to be safe in that moment? Meeting new friends is a huge one. Are their families going to be supportive, right? Is my kid going to be able to spend the night at someone else's house? How are they going to feel about it? When, do we reveal this? Do we not reveal this? So there's a whole lot, and that is going to keep coming up over and over and over again. So you do have to prepare. This is a lifetime thing. Assuming that you're alone in this, right? You're the only parent who's ever gone through this thing. 7% of the population is queer, right? At least. That's the measurable piece, right? Like that we don't know how many are not identifying. So anywhere you go, there are queer people. There are queer people in every state, in every city, in every country. And so there are places that you can go and find support, right? If their PFLAG is the number one organization that I always refer to. Great support systems everywhere. And so connecting yourself and your kids with other people in the queer community is super, super important, because everyone needs that sense of connection, for sure. And you are going to have your coming out journey as well as a parent, right? Like your kid is coming out, and you have to come out as the parent of a queer kid.
That's true. That's true. I want to give you guys a little reference point for her 7%. Rates of autism currently are about 10% of the population. So
yeah. And this is the other piece that I want to, regarding autism. There is a lot of chatter about all autistic people are queer, right? Or all queer people are autistic. We can get into correlation and causation, right? And I think it's important in my belief, people that have autism are often wanting to not be in all of the same boxes that society has for what is normal, right? And so my opinion is it's more of a willingness on their part to explore the options that are open to them, rather than being autistic means I am queer, right? Like I want people to be very careful about looking at different pieces of people and assuming one thing means another.
Yeah, absolutely. I experienced that with the kids and their ADHD, and intrinsically in myself, and have my own bias. Like I said earlier, I blamed it on their dad, and I thought I escaped. And it's just, you hear my words,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got a negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
And do I mean to do that? Absolutely not. Is it my own inherent biases? Yeah, absolutely. It's
But not
conditioning.
just yours. It's conditioning. It's school, right? Like all the misbehavior. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's everywhere.
exactly. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Especially for women, like we said at the beginning, women being diagnosed with ADHD, girls, it looks vastly different.
Yeah.
Vastly different than our counterparts. And so there's a lot of struggle with that as well, right? Because I was told very often in childhood that I was too chatty. I was too much, too loud, too intense, too bossy, too. And because I'm neurodiverse, people. Because I'm neurodiverse.
You're neurospicy.
I am so spicy on so many levels. That is just one of them.
Yeah.
Jennifer, talk about your programs and how people would know whether or not they want to explore working with you.
Sure. So if you find out your kid is queer and you go, we should probably have a conversation. That's the first thing, right? And so it's knowing that I take people wherever they are, right? So if there are some folks that I work with that literally have no idea what all of the letters in the acronym mean, right? So we do a lot of basic education. There are others that are accepting until they find out that their kid is. And then there are others who are true, absolute affirming allies for their kiddos, but something is coming up with family or something is coming up in a school situation that they just need some additional support. And I think having, the school background and school admin and library, I have a lot of different experiences to bring to the table in the conversation. The other thing that I am super excited about that is going to launch soon. Again, a million years ago, I created that resource directory for families. Now I'm finding parents actually still need some resources and information. So I am launching soon queercampfair.com, specifically to help parents of queer kids and queer ally kids find like the perfect summer experience for their kids. So that'll be coming out soon. So that's taking a lot of energy and time.
I love that so much. I'm surprised it didn't exist already, but that's amazing.
I have not been able, it could be, but I have not found it. And I am a pretty darn good librarian. So
I mean, if anybody's good at research, probably you. You know the Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah, so it's becoming one of those, if they need it, I will build it. And, that resource. But my entire career, everything has always been about connecting people with information and resources that they need. And then go off and live your amazing life.
I love that so, so, so very much. Jennifer, tell people where they can connect with you even if you suspect your kid is queer, you guys, it is never too soon to start the education of yourself.
Do it. Because again, even if it's not your child, it's someone in your child's class for sure. So my website is parentwithcare.com, all one word. I also have on my site a free download, a guide to understanding LGBTQ+. So it's a great place to start with all of the basic information, explanation of gender identity, expression, and sexual identity, all of the pieces that are the initial questions. And if anything there strikes you, again, you can, free phone call, just schedule a time and we can chat and see how I can help and support. And if you're getting ready to send your kid to camp, queercampfair.com will be live soon, collecting people's info so that I can make sure I let folks know that when it goes live.
That is so exciting. I cannot imagine something as validating as being in a camp with other kids like me.
Oh, yeah.
After feeling like an outsider for so long. Yeah, I could, even on just the neurodiverse level, I'm like, oh, where do I find my neurospicy moms? TikTok's the answer, by the way. But yeah, so I love TikTok for that reason, because I see another middle-aged woman. Oh, God, I hate saying that, but anyway, that is neurospicy, right? And I'm like, oh, me too. Oh, I'm not alone. So I can't even imagine on a bigger scale of these people that feel so isolated in their life to go to camp with other kids like them or experience things like that. That's absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. Amazing, my friend. I'm so excited for you. All right, friends, we're going to have Jennifer back for a little spicier conversation, probably about medical care, women, and the patriarchy.
We had a lot to talk about.
That's a lot. That's a big box. I might invite a couple friends. We might just have a free-for-all melee about the patriarchy and how it affects literally everything that we experience in our life on a daily basis. And I can't wait for that conversation, because
this has been great. You're a delight, Stacy.
You're a delight. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story and sharing the children's story. And sorry, I don't mean to, adult children, and educating those and educating me, because you guys, first of all, we have the documents that show in ancient times queer people existed. We have that. That exists. That's not a made-up thing. It's not a hypothesis. It's not a theory. It is. And so if they were around then, they ain't going nowhere. They ain't going nowhere. And so, the bigger question is, do you want to love your friends and family?
Yeah.
And if so, that means all parts of them, not just some. And if you need help doing that, contact Jennifer.
Yes, got you.
Contact Jennifer. Thank you again for joining me today. I super appreciate it. Friends, y'all know it's 2024. Please do all the YouTube-y things. If you're watching this on the YouTube, like, subscribe, follow, hit the bell for notifications. I'm actually going live tomorrow with Nicole Jolie, and she seems like a spitfire too. So I'm super excited about that. And make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to have a bang up conversation about the patriarchy in the next, couple of months. So I cannot wait for that. Jennifer, thank you again. And I will see you guys next time. Remember, it only takes just a few short minutes a day to physically rewire your brain for a better life. And if you need help with that, you know where to find me. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for watching. I love you, and I'll see you next time.